Fill it up with any sake, in the cauldron boil and steak. Eye of mutant terror frog, will of bat and tongue of dog. Adder's fork and blind one's sting, use its legs and howl its wing, for a charm of powerful trouble, like a head of boil and blubber. Double, double, toil and trouble, fire burn and cauldron rumble.
Hello, and welcome to this episode of Lights Out. I'm your hostess with the mostest ghosties, Sylvia Schultz. This episode of Lights Out is brought to you by Audible.com. Audible, stories that surround you. Demons. Most people will go their entire lives without running into one, but they are part of the invisible world that surrounds us. On this episode, we'll be listening to Wesley Theobald, a paranormal investigator who had a brush with the supernatural at a young age. Take my hand, and let's go. Lights out.
I had this encounter when I was 7 years old. My father still doesn't believe me till this very day, nor does my mother, nor does any of my siblings. Even though my older brother, he was there when it all happened. He just was probably too afraid to admit it to my father. Anyhow, being young, you have that very curious and that big mind for exploration. Every child had that.
Mm-hmm.
So we had just moved to a house in the south end of Peoria, and I still know the address. And I liked the house for some odd reason. Like, there's something about the house that attracted me to it. So we all moved in. Got to look at, the house. Being a kid, like I said, exploration problems. Curiosity kills the cat. Explored throughout the house. Basement was huge. Backyard was amazing. And I asked my mom, where will I be sleeping at? She was like, oh, you'll be sleeping upstairs with your other brothers. Me being like, oh man, I want my own room. Back then in the 90s, you were like, yeah, I want my own room.
How old were you?
I was 7. Okay. So, went upstairs. My dad had already brought his, our beds up. And everything was set up. So, first couple nights sleeping there, it was pretty amazing. I got to hang out with my brothers and all that. I got to play some, what was it at the time? Super Nintendo. Super Nintendo and Nintendo 64 was the stuff.
Uh-huh.
And, that third day, in detail, I would always hear noises. And I'd be like, I'm hearing noises on the other side of the wall.
Yeah.
But at first, I'm like, I looked out my window because there's a window there. And I looked, oh, it's just trees.
Uh-huh. So, no. Just turn this down.
So it was just trees, I'm guessing, okay, it's just trees.
Uh-huh.
So, it didn't bother me. So, as from there, a week on later, throughout the whole week, I was like, yeah, this is, enjoying the new house, meeting new friends. It was awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Then my father was upstairs one day. I came home from school. He was like, hey, son. I'm like, hey, Dad. And he was like, don't go in here. I'm like, why? It's just a closet. I'm like, I'm not the closet in this crawl space. It's unstable and safe. So he left. Being young, you're like, grown-ups don't know what they're talking about. So I went into the closet, and the door that was covering up the crawl space had a basic latch. And a couple old rusty nails in there too. So, I'm guessing, it's probably going to be a problem. Actually, the nails just came right out with the door as soon as I opened it. It was that old. So, I looked in, pretty dark. I didn't see nothing. But I thought I saw something moving in, towards the other side of the wall on the inside of the crawl space. So I'm like, what is that? So I put my arm in, my left arm.
Mm-hmm.
Started trying to reach for like if there was like a pull string, because at first I went on the side of the walls like, okay, there's no light switch, so there must be a pull string.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm reaching for the pull string, and then I heard what sounded like multiple growls all at once, but coming from the same entity, from the same being, like all in unison at exact moment of different levels of pitches and, you know, tones.
Okay.
And then something just came around and just went down and pulled back. I didn't know if it was a bite or a scratch or I don't know.
But something tagged you.
Something tagged me very good because I bled everywhere. Because it was at night and it was storming out. Rain. And rain is a known conductor for, you know, EMFs, which goes feed off of. Water's a really good conductor for that. And I've studied that. And I believe that was what caused the paranormal, you know, activity to become so strong within that house that night. Anyhow, I was screaming for my father at this moment. Because I've never seen so much blood in my life. I mean, I've stepped on glass and, you know, bumped my knee against the ground, tripped, fell, you know, little scrapes and a little bit of blood. You know, that wasn't nothing.
Yeah.
But this was serious. We went to the hospital that day. And, well, that night, I should say, because it was more towards night. I had my stitches. Doctor said he's got 18 stitches. At the time, I was a kid. But the thing is, I wanted to pursue that. And ever since, I've been seeking for that truth. And
So that was your first encounter with the paranormal.
yes, that was my very first, and that's what made me want to investigate, become a paranormal investigator.
Wesley was lucky. He kept his head, even when confronted by terrifying evidence of the supernatural at such a young age. Wesley grew up to be a good investigator, fearless when facing the unknown, but careful when gathering and reviewing evidence. I'm glad to call him a colleague. Join me next time when we'll hear another true tale of an encounter with the demonic. Until then, be safe out there as you go lights out.
Aun jolo hi ye ban ta